So recently it was leaked that Kamala Harris had compared Trump to Hitler and warned that America would go down a path of Germany in the 1930s if Trump were elected. She was concerned about this. And I had some thoughts about this because Kamala Harris was not necessarily saying this on the 2024 campaign trail. She criticized Trump a lot. She went as far as calling him a fascist, not a Nazi though, not comparing him to Hitler. She was aggressive in some ways, but definitely pulled some punches in other ways. And this obviously is an example of her pulling a punch. She could have gone out there and told the American people, listen, the 1930s Germany, Donald Trump, this is the big plan. He's going to turn America into 1930s Germany. He's like Hitler. Obviously, that would have been a very, very aggressive line of attack, and Trump would have responded very aggressively, and a lot of Republicans would have denounced her and called for her to apologize and accused her of inciting violence and all that type of stuff. But this led me to wonder, okay, are Democrats, are they really being candid enough? Should they actually say this stuff? Is it a good idea? Because if it's true, then it's like, well, there's not necessarily anything wrong with saying it. And obviously, yeah, it's debatable as a tactic. Obviously, nobody is a fence sitter and is like, oh, shoot, well, after Kamala Harris warned that Trump was like Hitler and said that America would go down the road of 1930s Germany if Trump were elected, that made me so pissed off that I decided to vote for Trump, even though I was on the fence at first. That's not something that's necessarily going to happen. At the same time, though, you know, does it really help necessarily? Are Democrats and leftists going to be like, oh, I wasn't going to vote for Kamala Harris, but then she went and compared Trump to Hitler, and now I'm going to vote for her? Again, I just don't know. I just don't know if a candidate's attacks on another candidate are going to win or lose them votes. There's something interesting too, a difference between the Democratic and Republican parties, if you can believe it, with respect to this as well. And it's that Republicans actually are kind of the opposite of Democrats in the sense that they spout more of their aggressive lines of attack, more of their bombastic criticisms of the Democratic Party, just unhinged stuff. But then behind closed doors, there's actually a serious question of whether or not they believe it. You know, they say stuff behind closed doors that's a lot more mellow. People talk about like, oh, I met this Republican politician and he was really normal and chill and he wasn't an unhinged lunatic. You know, I had dinner with him and a group of friends or something like that. So that happens. People say, oh, you know, Bill Maher was talking about, oh, Trump is so charming behind closed doors. I went to see him at Mar-a-Lago and he was really charming and nice and funny. And it's like, okay, you're entitled to that opinion. I've never met him personally, so he could be right for all I know. But what does that tell us? That maybe tells us that the Republicans, when they get in front of a crowd at rallies or when they're in Congress, they just go absolutely insane. They turn their brains off, they scream, they yell insults, they compare Democrats to Stalinists, Marxists, communists, accuse them of supporting all sorts of, what you name it, gender ideology, critical race theory, woke ideology, all of this stuff. They accuse the Democrats of supporting it. They just go totally off the walls. Meanwhile, the Democrats are like, Republicans can be very mean, but we can have a reasonable discussion with them. We'd like to have a reasonable discussion with them about immigration, about tax reform, about health care, about gun violence and gun control, and we think that we can work together to find some very pragmatic solutions. But then, behind the scenes, the Democrats are like, God dang it, those freaking Republicans, oh my God, they're just the worst. They're like Hitler Youth, those freaking Nazis. Oh my God, they're taking America to Nazi Germany all over again. That's kind of the dichotomy we've got here, the difference, where Republicans, they sort of go insane when the cameras are on them, but then behind closed doors, they're like, yeah, no, I don't actually believe in that stuff, you know. There are actual conservative commentators who are very, very obnoxious and very aggressive, especially with their criticisms of transgender people. But behind closed doors, they're like, yeah, I don't even care about that issue. I don't care about it at all, whatever. Like, live and let live. Be yourself if you're trans, whatever. But then on camera, yeah, it's like they're throwing temper tantrums about transgender people and LGBT people. So it's like, wow, they're like the opposite of the left and the Democrats. So do Democrats really have a problem with this? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of terrible stuff that you could say about the other side that I don't think would necessarily be helpful or hurtful. I know it would attract a lot of media attention, which might be sexy, actually, you know, that people would be like, oh, okay, this person's got media attention. That's pretty cool. You know, oh, Kamala Harris called Trump play golf twitler or something like that. And it's like, it gets a bunch of headlines and, you know, people are like, oh my gosh, that's so uncouth. what a crazy woman, what a crazy vice president. She should not be president. That's what Sean Hannity of Fox News would say. That's what Tucker Carlson would say. They'd be like, my goodness, we have never seen such a divisive figure in American history. And yeah, they'd be attacking her for her cackle and all that. And they'd be like, this is a wicked witch. And people would be like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of spicy. As Kyle Kulinski sometimes says, confident, charismatic celebrity types, that controversial as well. Yeah, controversial. And so it's like, that would be controversial. And maybe sometimes attracting just a bit of controversy is helpful for the Democrats, would be helpful for the Democrats. The Republicans step in all sorts of controversy. Donald Trump happens to be the master at it. But does he believe the controversial statements that he actually says? There's reason to believe that he believes in a lot of them, but not necessarily all of them. Behind closed doors, he might be somewhat of a different guy, For example, remember back in the day when he said he would let Caitlyn Jenner use whatever bathroom she wants at Trump Tower. Whatever restroom, men, women, whatever. But then he goes up at these rallies and he's like, we must stop the transgender agenda. The transgender is very bad. Stop the transgender agenda that the Democrats are imposing on the American people. The American people know, and it will hereforward be the U.S. policy that there are only two genders, man and woman. He does that, but behind closed doors, I don't think he cares about this stuff. He's like, yeah, let's say some stuff that's really sexy to the Republican base that gets them, they love talk about that type of policy because economic policy on the Republican front is very, very questionable to say the least. It's very questionable as to how well it plays with regular Americans. They just criticize inflation all the time, but they can't actually talk about their economic proposals. They can't talk about their plans for healthcare because, as I've talked about at length before, Republicans have given up on healthcare. They're cooked. They don't have a plan. They have concepts of a plan. Trump does. But yeah, they get out there and they talk about these social issues that they think are so sexy that really get their base mobilized. And the Matt Walshes, the Michael Knowles, the Ben Shapiros of the world, Tim Pool as well, they absolutely they salivate at the thought of these social issues, but they don't have that much to say with respect to economics and how the Republican Party will improve the economy. They're like, yeah, no, this is so cool. Trump said there are only two genders. He said it's the U.S. policy from here on out that there are only two genders. Isn't that so cool? Everyone please applaud. Libs of TikTok is like, woo, yeah, Trump, only two genders. He said it at his inauguration speech. It's like, this is a time to talk to the American people about national priorities, about all the important stuff, about things that really matter, not like, oh, yeah, by the way, gender, two genders. Really, buddy? That's very edgy. But yeah, edginess, the Republicans portray all this edginess on the exterior and on camera, but behind the scenes, some of them probably think their opinions are pretty stupid. Now, there are probably some exceptions like Marjorie Taylor Greene who genuinely believes that stuff, but there's a lot of it that they do to play to the crowd in order to get some fat tax cuts for their wealthy donors. And the Democrats, meanwhile, are like, we don't want to say anything too mean on camera, but behind the scenes, some of them are like, damn it, we don't want to turn America into Nazi Germany. We can't let the Republicans win. Just interesting little thing I've noticed. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think of Kamala Harris's comments regarding Trump and Hitler and Nazi Germany and all that? Like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. This is the Morris the Merrier, and I look forward to speaking to you in my next video.